So yes, as you mentioned, tiger parenting was all the craze a few years ago. And for those of you who don't know, tiger parenting is an approach that pushes children to reach high levels of academic achievement or success in extracurricular activities like sports or music. Okay, so now we have a new parenting style to talk about. It's called chicken blood parents. So Emily Feng wrote an article for NPR in which she describes this parenting style. And I do want to note, however, that even though the article talks about Chinese families and Chinese culture, I have seen this parenting style by white Americans because I grew up with like chicken blood parents, and then also not my family is not like that, but the area in which I grew up, a lot of chicken blood families, a lot of tiger families. So I don't want to say that this is specific to just Chinese culture. So the phrase chicken blood parents originates from an unproven Chinese medicine treatment in which chicken blood is injected into people, and the thought is that it will stimulate energy. And this parenting style is known to be attentive, and some people say that it's obsessive. It's also been called like aggressive helicopter parenting. So here are some of the traits. So some chicken blood parents may schedule their children's days in 15-minute increments. So, you know, maybe you like do math for 15 minutes, you do dance for 15 minutes, whatever, but everything could be done in 15 minutes so that you make sure you cover all of it. They also search online forums and they share tips and tricks with other parents so that this way they can get a hold of the most exclusive tutors or find the best sports coaches or singing lessons or whatever it is. They like share everything. Some parents will buy second homes so that they're in really great school districts. There were actually a lot of people who did that in where I grew up. Kids would have like second homes, and sometimes they would live independently. So they would be like 15 years old, like in a house by themselves, because their parents might have been from abroad. A lot of other chicken blood parents will enroll their children. Well, this is the main characteristic. They'll enroll their children in a lot of after school activities. So after going to school all day, they'll end their day at 3, and their parents will pick them up. And from 3 to 11, they will do like additional math classes or English tutoring. They might have like a dance class or singing lessons or whatever they have. So you may be asking why parents will do this sort of thing. And one parent in the article wrote, "I discovered the other children were learning all this extra material and my daughter did not know how to do anything. I was worried that if she did not take these classes, she wouldn't be able to keep up with other children." So one is peer pressure. The other reason why parents will do this is that it's very competitive in some areas. Like there's a limited number of spots for university or for schools or for jobs or whatever. And they want to make sure that they are setting their children up for success and they can get those limited spots. So there are problems with this parenting style. If you're spending all day supporting your kid and rushing them from one activity to the other activity, you can't do it for all your kids. So here's what one
this was brutal.
Yeah, this is what one mom said. She said, "We just physically are not able to expend the same amount of energy on our daughter number 2. I can only make sure she's at home and has food to eat." So
that's how you talk about an animal, like a dog or something like that.
Second daughter's name. My daughter number 2.
Daughter number 2. Yeah. So that part was really shocking to me. I mean, I figured something like that would happen, but oh wow, just the thought of that would just be horrible. So what do you two think about this parenting style? I want to hear from the two of you before I share what I think.
My first reaction to this was that, like you said, Serbi, this is not something that is like specific to Chinese culture. When I was growing up, I was surrounded by kids who were just as micromanaged, who, you know, had so many extracurriculars, were constantly doing like advanced placement courses, things like that. It's all coming from the same basic anxiety of like wanting to give your kid the best potential for success in life. And the most popular metrics by which you can measure those things are school performance and, a good extracurricular resume. The lady that commented that my daughter number 2, I don't have as much time for, that seems particularly harsh, but that's also one person who said this, and we don't even know how daughter number 2 feels about that. Maybe she's just someone who's like, no, I'm not interested in doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm, very assertive about my stance on that. So all of that to say, whenever I read a piece like this, especially when this seems to be sort of like just a rebranding of tiger momming, I just kind of get an icky feeling that this is really more about sort of like othering an entire culture of people, when this is, I never read a story in NPR that's like, dad screams at son for 3 hours after he drops football during big game. Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing that's confusing to me, like, or that I think there's something of a disparity in the way that these things are covered, that we have a tendency to like orientalize or fetishize other folks' cultures. And especially considering a lot of the sort of tension with regards to our relationship with China that is often like foregrounded in the media, this is just, to me, kind of feels like a weird way of dehumanizing people. Like, it sounds like at the heart of it, people want the best for their kids, and they're put in these high stress situations where it seems like in such an increasingly competitive economy, the only way to try and ensure some success is by like being a little bit helicoptery, or maybe a lot of bit helicoptery. But I don't necessarily know that needs like an entire new rebrand and specifically for this one region. But I digress.
No, you both made the point, which I think is true, that this isn't like just a regional or country-based thing. We've all seen this. We've all grown up around people that do this. What is it doing to developing minds, and what is it doing to the sense of purpose and sense of like the purpose of life that it gives children when we're focusing on the input of knowledge into the brain rather than fostering curiosity, creativity, all those sorts of things. And I think that's the part that bums me out. But Serby, give us your take on what you think.
So I agree with both of you, and I think it's too bad that some cultures are unable to place an emphasis on things like creativity and things that are not so academically based. I remember talking to some people who live in the Netherlands, and they commented that Americans are so driven. Like, everything is about your job. We don't live in a country like the Netherlands where we'll always be taken care of if we don't have a job. Like, they'll still have housing, they'll still have great food, they'll still have benefits and everything. We will have nothing. And I think that is what's happening maybe in China. I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong, somebody who's listening, please correct me. But it seems like you have to be successful in school in order to have great job placement or to be successful and financially successful, because there's just a limited number of opportunities. And that sort of limitation reinforces this type of parenting where you feel like you have to be the best. And I wish it wasn't like that, but it seems like that's a product of just the situation and the environment that they're in. I also agree, Raymond, with what you were saying, that it feels like this is like an otherness, or like we're really focusing on how they're Chinese, because I'm from an Asian culture, and we are more collectivistic than individualistic. So for me growing up, I've always looked at my white American friends, and it's so different than the way that I grew up, and their parenting mentality is a lot different than mine. So I remember when a friend turned 16, and she was immediately just expected to do everything on her own. Like, she had a car, she had to do it all. She was talking to insurance companies and figuring everything out on her own. And to me, that was so foreign. It was so strange. And there's never an article about that. Like, yeah. But there's always an article about how Asian cultures, like, people live at home until they're married, or that children help their parents financially when they get older and things like that. So that is always seen as like, what a unique thing. Like, how interesting is that? Well, for me, what's interesting is the other side. Like, you're completely independent. Like, you're totally on your own. So I'd like to read articles about that and have a discussion on that. Not that I think that that's wrong, but I wish that it wasn't just such a focus on like anything other than white American culture is strange.
You can always just look at like, how are people being educated, whether that's a public school, private school, university, primary, high school, or whatever. And what does that say about the values of a society? And this is where I think, globally, we have a lot more in common with the style of education than, this article wants to say. And I think it poses some questions that make me think about the Michael Bolton paradox, which is, if anyone's familiar with the movie The Office, there's a character named Michael Bolton. Yeah, Office Space, sorry. A character named Michael Bolton, and he's annoyed because people compare him to the singer Michael Bolton, and then they say, why don't you change your name? And Michael Bolton in Office Space says, why should I change my name? He's the one who sucks. And it's this sort of thing that I think Serby kind of got to this, like, well, what do you do when an education system like that sucks, but it is the game you have to play if you want to be successful in certain market economies? So, do you change your name when the system's the one who sucks?